Hello, good morning or good evening, depending where you are in the world. I'm Hashim. Welcome to another Pushing Film live stream. And today I want to talk about another of my favorite photo books, which is Istanbul by Alex Webb. Now, if you're pretty new to this, I've only started doing these live streams over the last few weeks, and I've alternated between doing these sort of book sharing live streams and other ones. But these live streams where I share a photo book, I'm really starting to enjoy because I feel like it's a great way to get a photographer's work out there, and especially the particular book I'm talking about. That way, if you have been curious about it or you're not sure what kind of work this photographer has, you can kind of get a preview, and then if you're interested in buying the book, you can always do that later or maybe borrow one from a friend. But this one I'm really excited about, actually. I know that I've shared already some other photo books, and there's something about street photography, and particularly Alex Webb street photography, that I think is something just next level in terms of the body of work that he's made over the decades that he's shot. And personally, even though I haven't seen all of his work or have a huge collection of his photo books, this one I feel like is probably one of his best ones, just based on the little that I've seen, because I have this and The Suffering of Light, which is a collection of a lot of his work. So the video is a bit slow and laggy, but not bad. Okay. I'm going to see if the bitrate improves over time, but yeah, thanks for letting me know on that. And again, thanks for anyone who's joining live. Let me know, are you guys fans of Alex Webb, or does anyone here have this book? What is your favorite Alex Webb body of work or photo book, or any street photographer for that matter? Let me know your thoughts, because I'd like to know where everyone's coming from. Yeah, the video does look a little bit laggy, but hopefully it improves. I think it is just the low bit rate, but at least the audio is good. And when we go to the book sharing view, which I'll have sort of like this, at least you can get a good idea of the imagery that's in the book. Okay, so I've heard of him, but haven't been exposed to his work. All right, cool. That's a good place to be coming from. So Alex Webb is a street photographer. I think he would definitely call himself a street photographer, who started at least professionally around the 70s. But despite that, I think he was shooting since he was a teenager, or even just a kid. His parents were both artists. I think maybe his father was involved in photography in some capacity, probably gave him his first camera, and he was shooting from a very young age, and he had that art background. So he definitely comes from a traditional background in terms of art, composition, and photography. And his work is characterized by this really sort of multi-dimensional, layered sort of look that you'll see, with stark contrast and a really good sense of timing and juxtaposition. But let's get into the book, and I'll switch to this other view. So, Istanbul, City of 100 Names. It's a nice photo book, decent size. Got the dust cover here with the embossed cover underneath it. I bought mine through Amazon, and I'm just going to read you guys a quick piece of this opening here, because it's quite interesting. It just sets things up. So in 1998, Alex Webb visited Istanbul, was immediately enthralled by the people, the layers of culture and history, the richness of street life. What particularly drew him in was a sense of Istanbul as a border city, lying between Europe and Asia. So he goes on to say this is something that fascinates him. He's definitely attracted to places that are borders, where cultures come together, and sometimes easily, sometimes roughly. And that kind of sets you up for what he looks for in his photography, whether it's this or his South American work as well. And in the end here, in Istanbul, City of 100 Names, Webb's ability to distill gesture, color, and contrasting cultural tensions into a single, beguiling frame is used to full effect in presenting his vision of Istanbul, an urban cultural center rich with the incandescence of its past, a city of minarets and pigeons rising to the heavens during the dawn call to Muslim prayers, yet also a city of ATM machines and designer jeans. So again, that really keen sense for juxtaposition, and he tends to raise questions in his work. That's what he says in interviews and when he speaks about his photography. He doesn't tend to take photos that answer questions, but rather raise questions about what you are seeing in the frame. And yeah, there's an essay by Orhan Pamuk. So that's a Turkish writer, I believe. But the essay is in the back here. So he's one of Turkey's most prominent novelists. And that's a really nice essay towards the end of the book there. But hopefully the connection's all right. And even though my video is a bit laggy on the face cam, at least the book is coming up all right. So does anyone here have any of Alex Webb's other photo books? I've been really interested in his Haiti work, or the stuff he did on the border of Mexico, I think. But I'm definitely a fan of this one, and I definitely will do another live stream somewhere down the track on the suffering of light. But because I really love this Turkey body of work, I thought I'd start with this one, because this is my favorite collection. So there's actually a nice black and white image that I think he took when he was 16 on his first trip to Istanbul with his parents. As I mentioned earlier, he didn't really start shooting professionally till later. He joined Magnum, and that was somewhere in the 70s. But the first image in the book is actually one of his most famous, I guess, at least from the Istanbul work. And this really sets you up when you buy this book, when you start looking through it, just sets you up for the style of Alex Webb's photography in that sort of sense of layering that I mentioned earlier, the stark contrast, the use of things like reflections, and just that really multi-dimensionality. And interestingly, a lot of people look at his work and sense that he has such a great sense of timing, and he absolutely does. But what he has even more so than that is he has, I think, an extremely strong work ethic. He's someone who really works hard in terms of getting out there and just shooting by repetition and pouring in a lot of his life into this photography. Sorry guys, I'm using my phone as a webcam and it's actually vibrating, so I'll put on airplane mode. Okay, that's not going to let me easily do that now, so sorry about that if it vibrates every now and then. We're just going to have to put up with that. But yeah, yeah, this photo sets you right up. And apparently this shot taken in the barbershop, it wasn't just by chance, it wasn't just by fluke. I've listened to him speak on a podcast in an interview with the well-known cinematographer Roger Deakins. It's a great podcast. If anyone's interested in finding out more about Alex Webb and his background, it's a really nice chat between himself and Roger Deakins. And he goes into detail about this photo, for example, where he shot multiple rolls of film just to get this shot. Right, because everything in it comes together in terms of him. He's actually shooting into a mirror here. These are all reflections. And he was waiting for that exact right moment when everything came together in terms of having someone there. You got this character looking straight into the reflection of where Alex Webb would have been standing with his camera here. The man in the barbershop, both in the first view here and the reflection view. And this perfect double reflection in the mirror down here, and this other part of the mirror here with the black outline. So everything really just came together, but he had to shoot multiple rolls of film just to be happy and settle on this shot. So that is the kind of photographer he is. He is someone who really gets in there amongst people and will really work the scene in that sense. So for anyone here who is a street photographer or enjoys shooting street, that's a really nice thing to take on board and to appreciate about the fact that, sure, there is a good sense of timing, but there also is a really strong work ethic when you look at his work on a technical level. But aesthetically, this is beautiful. It's a great shot, and again, just sets you up for the rest of the book. And this series was shot, I think, between 97 or 98, so from the late 90s into the early 2000s. And because I went on so much about that first shot, I'm going to sort of skip through some of these and just stop every now and then and comment briefly. Just, I mean, even on this one, they mentioned the pigeons in the beginning, but you can see that juxtaposition that he really likes to play with using layers, these two characters here, and how the silhouette of this lady echoes the silhouette of all the pigeons, for example. And then you've got this perfect placement of other elements of the building, the blocks, the entrance to what looks like a mosque here, and just his really good eye for light. He loves to expose, I think, for the highlights and midtones of a scene, and he likes to let the shadows go dark. And he shot on Kodachrome, as far as I know, on a Leica with a 35mm lens. I think he's definitely a 35mm lens shooter, and that's what he really just focuses on, is just having one lens and working these scenes. So again, shadows going really dark here. This is a beautiful shot, just the way he captures this light, which happens to create leading lines into there, again with the use of layers, and just a beautiful traditional composition there with more and more elements all subframed between everything there. So it's subtle, but it's brilliant at the same time, and it always just draws you back into this central figure here. Sean, that's a pretty cool first shot. First thought it was a window. Yeah. So it's tricky. He kind of really looks for things like subframes, reflections, layers, and really amazing eye for light, and yeah, just almost everything you could want in a great street photograph. So these two here, I love this one, just the way this cat is peeking up over the edge of this little boat here. But again, he's subframed some interesting, it's almost like a scene within itself here. These fishermen and another little subframe with fisherman and his rod up there. It's obviously much nicer if you have the book in your hands, but you really get a good idea just from these opening photographs. This one I quite like as well. Kind of reminds me of some early Henri Cartier-Bresson shots with the faded walls and the kids on the street, but that really interesting composition where he's cut this person off, and you can really see another thing happening here with another kid lying down perhaps, and then that other figure in this third of the image. Really good stuff. So Jay's saying Alex Webb's a 28mm shooter. Okay, interesting. Yeah, definitely a wide. I have seen him shoot with a 35mm lens, at least ever since he moved to digital work. I know he was walking around with an M9 and 35mm Summicron. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he shot 28 or if he shot both. But he really does get into a scene and get close and shoot wide, so that works really well. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this one definitely looks like a 28 or a 35. But either way, he knows his gear and he uses it well. And in this shot, again, he tends to echo elements of things happening in the scene. The angle of this kid on the swing rope and this sunken ship here. But that amazing element of having included this foreground layer getting in really close. So Jerry's saying, yeah, okay, mostly 28mm. 28mm going close up. Cool. I'm glad someone clarified that, actually, because I was sort of thinking he shot 35mm just based on seeing him shoot digital in his more recent years. But yeah, that's good to know. Again, another amazing shot here, just that multi-dimensionality, so many elements in one shot, all so perfectly framed, getting in really close, creating leading lines just through these characters, the colors. It all just works really well. And this shot here, this one is quite worthy of bringing up a bit closer. So in the beginning of the book, they talk about that juxtaposition that he looks for. And here you can see it, you know, Istanbul being a city that is, or Turkey in general, I guess, being almost, you know, between Europe and Asia in a sense, culturally and physically. And there is that modernization of culture and that changeover, I guess, that started to happen around the time he was shooting, between a really traditional sense that you can see on one side of the image here, you know, representing culture, religion, and modesty. Whereas on this hand, you have this billboard with an utter sense of commercialism and modernization and almost that sensuality, which is perfectly juxtaposed against the element he's captured on this side of the frame, black, and you've got here pink. So it's done on so many levels. That's the beauty of it, and it's really subtle. But even more so is that element of timing where the light has perfectly cast this shadow. And you can see that gaze right into the camera there, which really makes the image, in my opinion. And the way he's composed it there, and there, the colors, this is why he's considered to be such a master of the camera on the street. And this is something that he may have worked this scene and shot a lot, like that previous barbershop scene, but either way, there is definitely a sense of skill in his timing when it comes to these photos. So that's, yeah, definitely a good one here. And again, photos that raise more questions than they answer, as he has said in interviews, including that one with Roger Deakins. And definitely a poetic feel to a lot of his stuff. So as I flip through, you can probably start to see why I'm such a big fan of his work and why I was quite excited to share this book with you guys. So if you have been on the edge of purchasing or at least borrowing one of Alex Webb's books, this is definitely a good one to start with, or The Suffering of Light. So I've put links to both this book and The Suffering of Light in the description of this video. They are affiliate links. So if you do decide to use those links to purchase a book or anything else, that gives me a very small commission, which helps out the channel. So I definitely appreciate it if you do. But even if you don't use those links, buy it or get it from wherever suits you. It's a great book, and it's definitely worth being part of your collection if you're into street photography. Even if you're not, I think you can definitely appreciate this book. Another great image here, shot, he shoots inside, gets into tight places, kind of reminds me of that barbershop scene before, but again, framing multiple elements within one scene, using layers, reflections, and yeah, I mean, this is low light as well. It's just amazing that he manages to work these scenes and get so much in. And you'll start to notice that stark contrast and bold color just by letting those shadows go dark, a technique that he used quite often. So I don't want to spoil too much of the book for you guys, so anyone who does end up getting it, I'm going to sort of skip through into another notable shot. This one here. It's just crazy. So let me bring this a bit closer. It's almost a miraculous sense of timing that he's captured with this one, because, I mean, what can I say? You've got, of course, this foreground element here, which even if there was nothing else happening, this would have made a great shot, right? But it's taken onto another level just by having this character subframed within this blue box here, which really helps draw your eye. You realize if that blue square wasn't behind him, he'd probably blend into the wall a bit more. So it's just a matter of timing again, and the fact that he's sort of looking over at the camera, he's looking over at the camera, but then to put the cherry on the cake, you have this guy up here on the roof with what looks like a freaking Kalashnikov or something, also looking straight into the lens and subframed by the blue sky and this shape that's created by that sky and the roof line there. So it's just amazing that he's happened to be at the right place at the right time, or maybe he camped out the scene and just worked it, or, I mean, you couldn't have actually put this scene together better if you tried. And that's the beauty of that sense of chance, the fact that he's out there on the streets repeatedly, and he's, shot this series over many years. It's yeah, it's almost miraculous. So yeah, moving on, another one that you kind of see pop up quite often. I think this might have been in The Suffering of Light, I'm not sure, but there is some of the Istanbul work in that book as well. So again, you're sort of looking at this sense of border culture, modernization against a backdrop of tradition in a very historically rich city. Is anyone here from Turkey? Because I know I had some people reach out on Instagram. I had a couple of maybe Turkish guys who said they were quite excited about this body of work. And interestingly, I think it can be polarizing if someone who, for example, like Alex Webb is a foreigner to the city. He comes in and he captures this really interesting yet subjective view of the city where he raises questions, and it's always a reflection of the photographer and the way he's portraying the city and the people and the questions that he's raising about culture and whatnot. But then again, if it's someone who lives in the city, you might feel that he paints a picture that is not as objective as it could be, and it never is when it comes to photography. That's the beauty of it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see the perspective of someone who has been to Istanbul, or even better, is a native of the city, because it is apparently a great place for street photography and somewhere I definitely would love to visit. Beautiful shot here again, just that stark sense of contrast both in the colors and the scene itself, the white scarf, the black silhouettes and shadows here, the inclusion of the cat. Yeah, great stuff. This one here, again, just another almost serendipitous moment that you couldn't have asked to even set up any better. The fact that he's got this guy running through the scene with the backdrop and subframe of this green wall here. You've got this guy sleeping, what it looks like having a nap or chilling out at the front of his shop, just underneath that lampshade there. But then also this element down here with another character perfectly framed in this beam of light. So yeah, it's almost too good. So I think you get a pretty good idea of the book by this point, guys, and it's, again, definitely one I recommend, one that I love to flip through and look through whenever I feel like inspiration for shooting street. I definitely recommend listening to his podcast with Roger Deakins. He definitely goes into a lot of detail about the way he works, the way he shoots, his transition into some of his later work that he's done more recently, like the Brooklyn stuff that he's done with his wife, Rebecca Norris Webb. And yeah, definitely listen to that. I'll put a link in the description. And there's also a lot of really good YouTube videos and interviews and documentaries. There was actually a whole documentary, I think, where he was walking around somewhere in Korea doing street photography. But by that point, he was not shooting film anymore. He was shooting on the digital Leica M9, I believe. This is a really good spread. And another good thing about this book is the layout, the way it sets you up in the beginning, the breaks between double spreads, and that room to breathe sometimes where it's needed. But then also there's some interesting use of spreads here where he's got the photograph on this side, blank photograph, but you can actually sort of do this and look at them as a really nice contrast to each other. You can see that juxtaposition there, traditional culture, some kind of rally going on here, and a more modern take, or at least part of Istanbul, whereas here it's a very different take. And even as a photograph within itself, it's just perfect, the way all these characters are looking in different directions, the framing, the lighting. So yeah, it's a really well put together book as well. Love how half his body is in shadow and the lampshade is white, similar to his pants. Yeah, so with that earlier shot, I just love how when you first look at that photograph, you at first may not notice all those characters, and then you suddenly see that guy, wherever it might have been, sleeping out the front. That's one of my favorite parts. Parts of the bodies, like arms, legs, instead of a normal composition, including the whole body. Yeah, definitely. He's definitely really good at doing that, playing with composition. And it's a really hard skill, especially when you're shooting on wider lenses like 28s. Does anyone else here who shoots street have a different favorite street photographer? So I've got David in the comments saying Alex Webb is a 35mm shooter. That's actually what I thought. So that's what I was saying in the beginning, but then a couple people in the comments said he shoots 28. So yeah, definitely either way, whatever lens he uses it well. As far as I know and have seen, he does use a 35mm Summicron and he tends to stick with that, but I'm not sure. So yeah, it doesn't look like as much distortion sometimes as you would expect from a 28. Maybe he shot both, but either way, he knows how to really get in close and to layer elements of the scene like this one. I mean, he must have been a foot away from this guy. The lens can't even focus this close, but he's perfectly attained focus on what's going on here. He definitely doesn't really shoot wide apertures. I think he generally would stop down, let the shutter speed go quite slow. I would say he shoots between a 60th and 125th a lot of the time, especially if he was shooting Kodachrome 64 maybe. He would be shooting f8 plus a lot of the time, f8, f11, except maybe in low light situations. The photo looks like she's laying her head on the man's shoulder. Yeah, that's. I think that's intentional. I'd like to think it's intentional, but even if it's not, the thing is, Alex Webb has admitted that he has had a lot of situations. I think there's another photograph from one of his other books where there's a sort of a hole in a wall and there's a guy surfing that you can see through that subframe, but he didn't even notice the surfer through the frame until he got the shots back. And admittedly, sometimes those miracles do happen, and he has had those happen. And it kind of reminds me of when Trent Park, another great Magnum photographer, talks about shooting on the street. Sometimes you get unexpected things. You might be paying attention to one part of the frame and someone walks in at the last second, but it really makes the shot. And I think sometimes you can't plan for everything, but you can get those almost happy accidents. And I think there definitely is an element of that in Alex Webb's photography as well. Yeah, so this work is so varied as well. That's the beauty of it. Some of it's, it's shot over quite a few years, and obviously different parts of Istanbul, which is a very big city. So there's a lot of good content in it. So Josh is saying Joel Meyerowitz, Camilo Jose Vergara, Gordon Parks. Okay. Quite a few street photographers. Hannon Levitt needs to be talked about more though. Fred Herzog, yeah, he's great. I've got his book, Modern Color. I definitely like his more sort of calm work. So this one is the cover photo, the really great one here. So this is one of the situations where he may not stop down and get as much sharp detail and backgrounds, but this is the central figure here. Again, raises questions. What's this kid doing seemingly alone at nighttime with the fairy floss? But you'd like to think that, he wasn't actually alone. But Alex Webb just sort of framed it that way, just to raise those questions in what looks like could be a questionable part of the city. Maybe not, though. Is it just the way he's portrayed it? And the book sort of does transition here into some more night stuff. Maybe a nightclub or something, or someone waiting outside of a nightclub, and they kind of work well together as a spread. Yeah. So I think I'll save some. I won't show everything. I want you guys to, if you get the book, have a few surprises, but maybe finish on this one. This is a beautiful shot. Just really calm, still giving you that sense of place, but not a bit of a departure from some of those earlier scenes, but it's a nice way to finish the book. And is it the last shot? Yeah. So I think it really also reminds you how much importance there is in the layout of the book. It's almost like kind of working your way through a musical piece where it sort of has highs and flows and ebbs and whatnot, but then it sort of comes back down towards the end here. So, Saul Leiter is a personal favorite, as are Helen Levitt and Vivian Meyer. Nice. I'm a big fan of Saul Leiter as well. Him and I feel like Fred Herzog have a fairly similar energy in their photography. Not the same look or style necessarily, but that it's a different energy, for example, than what I would say Alex Webb's photography is. More introspective, I guess. They're probably more introverted photographers, as was Vivian Maier. The only thing is I'm not familiar with Helen Levitt's work very much, so I probably need to look more into that. I like Webb in terms of how often his busy, layered frames still have a sense of calm. Yeah, that you could definitely say that. Like this one's almost complete calm, but except, you've got this sort of heavy sense of contemplation on this guy's face. But then, yeah, even something as busy and layered as this, they have a sense of calm in them. And I don't know how that's achieved, really. And how good is that? The fact that he's got that silhouette of someone right there within that frame. I mean, did he stand out here in front of this bus or tram or whatever for a while? It really makes you wonder. But yeah, he definitely was someone who shot volume. And I was quite surprised when I heard that in that interview that he was in this barbershop and shot through, I think he said 5 rolls of film or something. That's a lot of photos. And he finally just settled on this one shot. And if you have Magnum contact sheets, I think he does have an entry in there, but it's from his earlier black and white work where he did some interesting black and white stuff using an infrared flash. So that was really cool. David, Alex Webb is my favorite. Love his layering and framing style. Yeah, cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed some of this photo book. And if you are Alex Webb fans, thanks for joining and checking it out. If you don't have this book yet, definitely one to put on your list. Do you guys have any suggestions for further live streams? I definitely want to do one on the suffering of light. I've decided that, but I might leave that for a while, do some other books perhaps and some other live streams, and then do an introduction to Alex Webb sort of through the suffering of light, which I think might make a better introduction if you're not familiar with his work. Raj, the use of color is quite lovely. You should see Lartigue in color. I actually have that book. That's a good one. Yeah, Jacques-Henri Lartigue. I have 2 of his books. I have In Color and which one? Yeah, it's another one. It's a smaller book, but In Color is great. Very contemporary use of color, despite the fact that those photos were shot almost 80 years ago. Yeah, he was definitely a pioneer in terms of experimentation, apparently. He was very experimental with new technologies at the time, and I think wet plates and color and some of the earliest stuff. Lartigue's definitely great. Do the contact sheet book. Okay, yeah, that could be a good one to do. It's a heavy book though, so again, that could be something I could just touch on. And yeah, that's actually a good idea. I feel like a lot of people are familiar with Magnum contact sheets, but it's a good book for anyone who has somewhat of a collection of photo books. It's one of the earliest ones I think I got. I just missed something earlier from Sean. I loved watching John Free in his videos, and one of his videos, he sat on a curb and went through his black and white prints. Yes, I've seen that. That's a really good video. Yeah, Sean, you should, if you can find that video, I'll try and find it. I'll put it in the comments. John Free's great. He's so inspiring just to listen to him speaking, and for him, when he talks about what inspires him and who inspires him. Jeff, maybe you could look through some books on Lee Friedlander. Okay. He has a large volume of work and has photographed many different subject matters. Yeah, that could be good. I'm actually not as familiar with Lee Friedlander. I have a book that has both his stuff, Diane Arbus and Gary Winogrand. So it's actually a book based on an exhibition that was done at MoMA. It was called New Documents, and it has some of his work, but also Winogrand and Arbus. But if I ever get my hands on more of Lee Friedlander's book, that could be a good one. Joseph Kudelka's Gypsies, yeah, there's so many great books, and you should see my wish list. It's always growing, and the most recent book I got, it was by, what did I get most recently? I'm trying to figure out, because I got 2 books. Yeah, it was Maldicidade. Is that what it's called? Yeah, Miguel Rio Branco, really good, Brazilian photographer. Only discovered him recently. It was probably through a recommendation of one of you guys in the comments. That's what I love about doing things like this live stream. I always get really good recommendations for photographers based on what I like. And that's, I think, what's cool about you guys joining in the live stream is you get to see, similar interests. The New Documents, that's quite an important piece. Yeah, really good, really important. It was sort of the earliest documentary photographers, those 3. If you want to start with Friedlander, the self-portrait books are some of the nicer ones to begin with. All right, cool. I'm definitely going to go back on some of these recommendations. Thanks a lot, guys, for your recommendations. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are watching this post-stream, I hope you enjoyed it too. I know it can be a bit long and I kind of go on a fair bit sometimes, but that's the nature of doing the live stream, just sitting here chilling with you guys. I want to thank everyone again for continuing to support the channel. Being here in Melbourne, Australia, we are still locked down and we're pretty restricted in what we can do. Being a curfew, for example, we can't leave more than 5 kilometers outside of our home. And even if you do leave your home, it can only be for essential shopping and work if you're allowed to work, which I am not. Some of my work that I almost was able to do, I needed to get a permit. I couldn't get the permit to do because things like photography are not considered essential. So it's great to be able to sit at home, make videos, do these live streams, connect with some of you guys. And I feel like it's been really good. The channel's grown in this last period of the year, in these last few months. So it's been good to connect with more of you guys and put a bit more effort into the channel, doing videos weekly, which is something I'd never done, not even monthly. That was really hard before. So yeah, let me know what you think. Please, I'm always open to hearing feedback. Even if it's something you don't like, let me know. Always open to suggestions. If you want to join the continuing chat, you may or may not know I made a Discord server, which I put the details for in the description of this video, which is just a forum where you can go in and chat. I've divided it into different channels. So for example, you've got the photo feedback channel or a technical issues channel where people can help each other out. I just added a buying and selling. So it's something that I want to continue to sort of cultivate and grow and use it as a means to help everyone else connect and help each other out. So yeah, again, thanks for the support. Thanks for joining on today's live stream or video if you're watching later. And I think I'll end things there. Definitely consider getting Alex Webb's Istanbul, City of 100 Names. And enjoy the rest of your day if you're here down on the Australian side, and the rest of your night if you're elsewhere. All right, guys. I'll speak to you next time.